Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Tonight we're discussing the tragic death of 25-year-old Ashley Barnett, who died while on a cruise vacation in 2005. Her death devastated her family and raised questions about investigating deaths that occur at sea, where jurisdiction, evidence, and accountability can quickly become complicated. I'm honored to be joined tonight by Ashley's brother Seth. Together, we'll remember Ashley as the person she was, discuss the investigation into her death, examine the unique challenges families face when a tragedy happens in international waters, and talk about what travelers can do to better protect themselves when traveling abroad. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So, Seth, I want to start out with your sister. I know that just from what I've read, she seems like a good person who I believe she wanted to get into acting was her ultimate goal, and she had found a job in the entertainment industry. Can you tell us about her?
Yeah, sure. We were 2 years apart in school. So when she was a junior, I was a freshman in high school. A lot of her friends were my friends, and vice versa. A lot of my friends were her friends. We hung out with a lot of the same people. She was, at least in my opinion, very popular in high school. So for anybody who didn't know me personally, all through high school, I was Ashley's little brother. So she was very well liked. She was funny, goofy. Um, she had a really infectious laugh that when you heard her laugh, you had no choice but to laugh with her. She was really talented. She was a great performer. We were in choir together, and she was a great dancer. She didn't get into acting until young adulthood, I would say, probably late teens, early 20s. Um, she kind of got interested in it, and she ended up working for CBS Studios. She worked in the mailroom at CBS Studios for a little while, and through that job ended up working as a production assistant on Will and Grace. And because of that, when she got into acting, got a part in Will and Grace. It was very small, very kind of limited stuff. But then that kind of um, ended up causing her to get a part in Passions, the soap opera. And she was really starting to like hit full steam into her acting, really concentrating, working hard. And she ended up going to work for a film composer. His name's John Debney, and he's still a really good friend of our family's. And did a lot of work behind the scenes doing that, but he also helped her, try to push her acting career, let her go to auditions, and was very flexible with her work schedule. So yeah, she was my best friend. We hung out all the time, and it wasn't because we were forced to, like a lot of siblings are, but we had, like I said before, we had the same friends. So anytime one of us had something to do, we both ended up there. And she was amazing. Everybody loved her. I don't know anybody who didn't like her. So uh, as made evident at her funerals, there were, I don't even know how many people were there, but almost the entire cast of Will and Grace was at her funeral. A bunch of different actors were at her funeral. It was standing room only in a very large church. And John Debney composed all the music for her funeral. It was a pretty big sight. So I think that was a good testament to the kind of person Ashley was.
That was well said, and that's incredible that you've got a dream like that that's so ambitious. And she actually got starting out as a mail clerk. I mean, that's something that sounds like a TV show of someone that started out from the very bottom, literally getting their foot in the door, and then through hard work and just being an ambitious person was able to work through and actually get a spot on the show. That's an incredible life. I wanted to talk about this cruise that she went on. We're not going to use her boyfriend's name, but she does go with her boyfriend and some of his friends. Is that right?
Yeah, it was her boyfriend, her boyfriend's brother, and three of his friends. And my sister knew them all, but she wasn't extremely close with the other ones. We all went to high school together, so I knew them too, but I was never good friends with any of them. I would say if I knew one of them better than any of the others, it was her boyfriend's younger brother, because he was closer to my age and we played baseball together and things like that. But I wouldn't say I was extremely close with any of them, and neither was she, except for her boyfriend. She was obviously close with her boyfriend, but the other three were, or four, I guess I should say, they were acquaintances at best. One of them was good friends with Ashley when they were very young, like elementary school age, but they had grown apart and hadn't hung out in quite a while.
And this is I believe it's a 3-day cruise that they originally were going on, and she was boarding the cruise ship in Long Island, California, right?
Long Beach, yeah.
Long Beach, California. Sorry.
Yeah.
So they board in Long Beach, and I assume this is going to be a young crowd. She is about to be 25. She's still 24 when
Yeah.
this happens.
Hmm.
And the crowd that she's with, would they be described as like a party crowd? Is she into, I assume she drinks at her age. Is she into anything else or?
No, no, that the group she went with, I would consider kind of a party crowd. Um, and Ashley enjoyed going to parties, but it was more of the social aspect of going to a party than anything else. And she did drink, but she didn't drink heavily. She was sort of notoriously known as somebody who would nurse one glass of white wine for an entire party.
Right.
And she never did anything else. She didn't experiment with other stuff. In fact, she was pretty adamantly against using any kind of recreational stuff. So yeah, we didn't know at the time that her boyfriend used, I don't know what I'm allowed and not allowed to say.
You can
Uh,
say it. Methadone. I'll say
yeah,
it.
he was using methadone, but it was because he was addicted to opioids.
Right.
So he was using the methadone to try to wean himself off of opioids.
And is that a problem that everyone was aware of, or I assume
I
she was aware of it, right?
Ashley was aware of it. I wasn't aware of it. My mom wasn't aware of it. As far as I know, none of my family was aware of it. Um, and he had been clean for I don't know exactly how long, but for a decent amount of time before this, and had relapsed. So part of the idea of going on the cruise was for him to detox, because Ashley had told him that if he didn't quit, that she was going to leave him. So uh, he was going to use the cruise to detox, which anybody who's ever been on a 3-day booze cruise, as they call them, is not my idea of somewhere I would try to detox, but to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the environment for that at all. Did he bring anything else with him on the cruise? Any other drugs that you know of?
The only thing I know for sure is that he brought methadone, he brought uh, Vicodin,
Okay.
and somebody in the group brought marijuana with them, but
Okay.
I don't know for sure who brought that.
I saw the Vicodin in one of the articles I was reading, and I didn't know of how true that was. And he does not bring the methadone in a prescription bottle, does he?
No. So we don't know exactly what bottle it was in. It was either Dayquil or NyQuil, and I've heard
Okay.
both from different people that uh, claim to know for sure. So I have somebody telling me, "Oh, it was for sure NyQuil. I know it was NyQuil," but then I have somebody else says, "Oh, for sure, I know it was Dayquil." So we don't know for sure, but it was in either a Dayquil or a NyQuil bottle in liquid form.
So they go on the cruise. He gets this stuff on board, which isn't a hard process, right? And everyone's having a good time. Would that be fair
Yeah, I mean, I think
at
initially
first?
that first night, they were all they went to go watch a band play. I think it was Slightly Stoopid. Went to go watch them play. Seemed like everybody was doing fine. We do. I don't personally have it. I'm pretty sure my mom does, but we have video footage from that night, from Ashley's personal video camera of them at the concert and then in the casino, talking in the casino. So it seemed like everything was okay in those videos.
But at some point, from what I've heard, that her and her boyfriend get into some type of argument.
Yeah, as for as much as we've been able to put together, while they were in the casino, she said she wanted to go up and go to sleep because she wanted to get up early in the morning and go to port. And he wanted to stay out. So they argued a little bit. He then agreed, hey, I'll walk you back to the room. And so they went back to the room. Apparently, according to some statements made by other people that were in their corridor, there was a little bit of arguing going on in their cabin. At some point, he decided she's going to go to sleep. I'm going to go back out and keep partying. So he left. We don't know a exact time. We've been given sort of anywhere from around 11:30 to 1 in the morning is when all of that took place, where she wanted to go back to the room. He wanted to go back and party. And then, he apparently left, stayed out for a few more hours. According to him, he came back to the room at around 3 to 3:30 and said that Ashley was sleeping and he didn't want to wake her up. So he just curled up in the bed and went to sleep. Didn't touch her, didn't, tell her he was back, nothing. And then, according to him, woke up around, this is kind of conflicting information. We don't know exactly, but somewhere around 9:30, 10 o'clock. And Ashley was still sleeping. And even though they argued about getting up early to go to port, he decided he was going to let her sleep in. So he left the room and met up with the other people they were on the cruise with, supposedly to have something to eat. And he didn't come back to the room until almost 2 o'clock, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and found that Ashley wasn't breathing. So he ran out into the hallway to yell for help. Apparently one of the people that was in that corridor with them was a volunteer firefighter, so he was the first one over to try to help them. He started CPR on Ashley and had to tell her boyfriend to call whatever the ship equivalent of 911 is. And nurses got to their cabin at like 2:07, if I remember right, which was about a 5-minute response time. And then they began CPR. I want to say about 15 minutes after that, a doctor arrived. And then at about 2:35, they got a defibrillator to the room. So almost 30 minutes, they get a defibrillator to the room. And they attempted to revive her with a defibrillator, which didn't work. And she was pronounced dead at 2:47 on that Saturday.
And when she's pronounced dead, where is the ship at exactly? Is it in Mexico or is it in international waters?
It is docked in Mexico. So this is one of the things that we didn't know, and I think it may vary depending on the cruise line or depending on the specific ship itself. But according to this cruise line, they did not have a morgue on the ship, so they had to leave Ashley's body in Mexico. Um, that was obviously something we didn't prepare for. Nobody prepares for something like that. We didn't know how to handle that or who to contact or anything. And the cruise line really wasn't much help. Not to mention her boyfriend wasn't talking to my mom, so we didn't get any information from him. We were initially told by the cruise line that he was being questioned by cruise security, and that's why he couldn't talk. But then the cruise line later called my mom and told her, hey, he's done being questioned. He just hasn't wanted to talk to you. So we didn't hear, or my mom didn't hear from him until Sunday, I believe. And at that point, the cruise line had left Ashley in Mexico, and her boyfriend and their friends have all gotten back on the boat and are headed back to Long Beach, which I still really struggle with because I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm not leaving my girlfriend by herself in Mexico until a family member can get there or until we know exactly what's going on. But
Right. And there's a lot of odd things that are occurring here. Let's back up a little bit while we're talking about some odd things. So, the boyfriend goes to or walks her to the cabin, right?
mhm.
And is there any security cameras that are in the hallway that are capturing all this?
We were told that the security cameras were inoperable at the time.
Okay. All right. So security cameras aren't working, but according to him, he walks her back. And according to him, she goes to bed. And then when he gets back at 3:30, they're sleeping in the same bed, right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure because I've heard, um, and I don't remember exactly where I heard this from, but somebody said that she fell asleep on a couch in the room, which I don't know if that's true or not. That's just something I've heard. But based on my knowledge of these little tiny cabin rooms on these cruise ships, there's really not anywhere else for her to sleep but the bed. So uh, my assumption is that they were in the same bed.
And it's just two of them in a cabin, right?
Yeah, it's just them two.
Okay. Right. I was just thinking that if you're getting into bed with someone, especially if it's your girlfriend and it's at 3 o'clock in the morning after you've been drinking and you didn't touch her at all, just seems kind of odd.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And so we know that when he wakes up, he claims that he's letting her sleep. And again, he doesn't touch her, he doesn't check on her, he
Yeah, no,
doesn't notice if she's breathing or moving at all.
he said in the 48 hours episode that they did back in, I think it was 2006, they interviewed him and he said that she was snoring when he got up in the morning, which I find a little odd because when we were younger, we shared a room and I never once ever heard her snore or even breathe heavily in her sleep. So I don't know if that's just he didn't check on her, so he needed to come up with something to say he knew she was asleep or what. But yeah, I find that pretty odd.
Right. And so then he goes off, he does not check on her. According to him, he hears her snoring, and then he goes and has breakfast with his friends and comes back, and that's when he finds her unresponsive.
Yeah,
So when she is in Mexico, an autopsy is eventually performed. I assume that that happens when she comes back to the United States, right?
actually, we had to have one done in Mexico.
Okay.
Um, so what we had to do, and this is something else that we didn't know going into it, was that Mexico had to perform an autopsy because there was kind of a jurisdictional gray area. Nobody really knew if it was going to be Mexico's investigation or if it was going to be the FBI's investigation or who it was going to be. So Mexico initially said, hey, we're going to take it for now until we can determine whose investigation this is. They performed an autopsy pretty quickly. I want to say within 2 days. They determined that she died from the toxic effects of methadone. That's really all it determined. It was sort of inconclusive. They didn't attribute that to her death. They sort of kind of danced around it, and I'm sure translation is part of the issue. But we arranged to have an autopsy done in California and had to communicate with the Mexican authorities because apparently to get somebody who has died in another country, to get them back to the United States, they have to be embalmed. We didn't know that. So we had to organize with the Mexican authorities to have certain tissue samples sent back with her. So they did things like the fluid from her eye, blood samples, tissue samples, hair samples, things like that. And then we had a private doctor in California do an autopsy here. His autopsy determined that it was methadone poisoning that killed her and classified it as a homicide. And he also determined, based on hair follicle sample tests and the fluid from her eye, that she had no history of drug use at all, like zero. So I'm grateful that my mom had the wherewithal to have them do that, just because at the time I wouldn't have ever thought anybody would question whether Ashley was using drugs recreationally, because we all knew she didn't. But my mom had the, wherewithal to ask them to do that, and I'm grateful that she did.
So this we've got a comment here from Hannah. Um, Even as a medical advocate of sorts, a body needs a chaperone so no one tempers with it. Because it's now evidence, especially in suspicious circumstances, even sleep in the hospital till a family comes. So that kind of brings me to a point of, you said there's no morgue. Okay, so her body is taken to Mexico, and with the room itself, is that sealed off? Is anyone staying in that? Like how is the evidence preserved? Um,
I,
you were
I don't
saying
really have.
that the body itself, you I guess gave a list of tests or things that need to happen so they could examine it in the U.S. But with the physical evidence, excuse me, in the cabin, how is that preserved or is it preserved?
We don't really know. Um, I Based on what the cruise line told us, they sealed it off, um, but we don't know for how long. We don't know if they sealed it off until the FBI was able to get there when they got back to Long Beach. I don't even know if her boyfriend was allowed to go back in the room and get his stuff, or if he wasn't, and they had to give him clothes and things like that. We don't know that, so I'm not exactly sure how that was handled.
Yeah, I just brought that up because being a former law enforcement officer, and I believe you were as well, that's
Mhm.
one of the basic things you do in any type of death investigation is you do a search of the room and you're looking for pill bottles and jotting down what medicines are around that person and the prescribing doctor. And I would hope that they would see that there's a NyQuil bottle or a DayQuil bottle, and someone would make sure that that was tested.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just don't have an answer to that, and um, I've submitted a FOIA request to the FBI, and it was initially denied. They claimed third-party privacy reasons for denying it. I did appeal it, but I haven't heard anything since, and it's been 8 months probably.
So how was that working with the FBI? Did you have, was there a counterpart in Mexico that was also working with on this case, or a liaison with the cruise liner? How did that investigation go?
Yeah, we had a point of contact with the Mexican authorities, and he was actually better at communicating with us than the FBI was at the time. They were really not very professional with us. They didn't communicate with us very well. We didn't know what they were looking into or what they had. Um, when they had some of Ashley's uh, personal belongings to get them back to our family, they contacted my mom, and they like had my mom drive 45 minutes into some shopping mall parking lot to give her Ashley's personal belongings, which
Hold on.
seems very strange.
So is this like a random guy that shows up with her belongings and is like, I'm like gives them to him in the back of their pickup truck or something?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the way my mom described it to me, even she was shocked. She was like, "Isn't some of this evidence? Don't you guys need to keep this?"
Right.
And they're just like, "No, we're done with it."
So we can go out on a limb and say that the FBI was not able to collect probably everything that they should have been able to.
I can only make that assumption is that, and I don't know if it's because they did a shoddy investigation or if it was the cruise line didn't seal the room. So they were like, well, we can't use any of this because there's been people in and out of this room since everything happened. I don't know.
And that's what's so troubling about this is that if that room is not sealed and the boyfriend or one of his friends has access to the room, then that just opens the door for tampering and evidence to be destroyed.
Hmm.
And you would think that there'd be some type of protocol that a cruise line would have. Like, if you have a death investigation, these are the steps we're going to do. Like, we're going to find an inner cabin for the people in there, and no one's going to be allowed in there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
none
You
of
would.
that happened, right?
I mean, not that I know of. It maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I really wish we could find out. Another aspect of something that I find really strange is that the key log for their room um, malfunctioned. So we don't have any of the information on who went in, what time people left, none of that. So I find that to be kind of strange too, because that would tell us if they sealed the room. If nobody
Right.
went in or out for 48 hours, then we know they sealed it off till they got back to Long Beach or whatever. But we'd never got that information.
Yeah, and if this happened in America, you would have, if a house is sealed off, you've got an officer standing by until the
Hmm.
scene is released,
Yeah,
and that's
keeping a
something that
log of
cruise
everybody who
liners
goes
have
in
to
and
figure
out.
out.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I don't. I mean, I've kept more crime scene logs than I care to remember. So I know, like you have to keep a log of everybody who comes in, when they
right?
come in, who they're with, when they come out.
Exactly. And if you're telling me that the cameras are not working, and as Hannah pointed out, the door malfunctioned, yeah. Um, you've got all these kind of convenient things that are happening, and I think that that leads to people speculating as to why they're happening. I'm not saying that they intentionally did that. I'm saying that the cruise line, hopefully, all cruise lines are looking at this case and changing their protocols on how they're handling death investigations, because it's going to happen eventually. Not un, people are going to, especially with older people that are going on board, you're going to have deaths on a cruise line.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to talk about this from the standpoint of, we've talked about kind of some of the lessons that have been learned, but your mom, Jamie, really took the reins on, and she started the International Cruise Victims Association.
Hmm.
Can you tell us about that and what the kind of goal is of the organization?
Yeah, sure. She actually got contacted by international cruise victims after Ashley passed, and they were a pretty small, um, group of people, like 5 or 6 people. Some were attorneys, um, but they had created a network for support. So they had maritime attorneys that you could contact through them. They had victim advocates you could contact through them, and it started out, at least I think, initially as like a kind of a support network for people who were victimized while on a cruise, because I think, especially as of late, people have come to realize that the cruise line does not care. None of them do. So, somebody's assaulted on a cruise line, they really couldn't care less. They may fire the employee, but then that employee gets hired by another cruise line 2 days later. Um, but so she got contacted by them and got really heavily involved pretty quickly. And then after a few years, they asked her to be the president. So she's now the president of International Cruise Victims, and is pretty regularly going to Washington, speaking with politicians to get them to pass new laws that will make cruise lines safer for Americans, that will protect their rights that we have here while on a cruise, and ensure that there's more safety measures in place. Right now, they're really going back and forth about man overboard protocols and man overboard detection. That the law was already passed, so every cruise ship is required to have man overboard detection. Um, the cruise line is under the assumption that if the ship was built before that law was passed, that it doesn't apply to that ship, but that isn't the case. It's supposed to be retroactive. So every ship is supposed to be now equipped with man overboard equipment. So there's a big back and forth going on with that. But yeah, she was in the Amy Bradley is Missing documentary, about being a cruise ship safety advocate, talking about the dangers of taking a cruise, and um, the things you should know before you go on one, the questions you should be asking. Um, yeah, she's done a lot of work.
Yeah, and I'm sure Ashley is proud of the work that you and your mom are doing and bringing awareness to this. Is there any other laws or things that are getting pushed to these cruise liner as far as investigations or working with the FBI? Has any of that improved at all?
Um, a little bit. I think right now one of the big things that they're trying to concentrate on is forming something akin to what the FAA is for uh, airline, something similar to that for cruise lines, where there's
Okay.
one body that kind of oversees things and investigates things. I think they're probably a long ways away from it, unfortunately, but that's their thought process right now, is to start something that is akin to what the FAA is for air travel for cruise ships.
Yeah, and I'm sure these things won't happen fast, but that's good that at least hopefully things are going in the right direction. When so as far as your sister's case, though, is there any other progress with it, or are we still just waiting for the FBI to continue with their investigation?
Well, the FBI closed the case. So I haven't gotten this in writing yet. I'm working on it, but I did have somebody reach out. They found my TikTok, and it is a former FBI employee who was able to tell me that the case was closed, that they closed the case in 2011, and that they had recommended the case for prosecution to the Attorney General's office in 2007. So after they recommended the case for prosecution, The attorney general refused to prosecute, and because the attorney general didn't prosecute, the FBI closed the case. We don't know. I wasn't able to find out what they were going to prosecute, what crime, and I wasn't able to find out who they were going to prosecute. So I don't have that information. I'm still trying to get it, but we do know the FBI closed the case in 2011.
Yeah, and sorry to bring this up again, but just to be clear, yes, the methadone bottle, uh, or the methadone was in the NyQuil bottle or DayQuil. It was in a bottle that did not say methadone, and Ashley was not aware, I'm sure, that methadone was in there, right? Because, like we said before, she was against hard drugs, and this is not something that they saw in her system as far as in her hair or in her eye fluid. So this is not something that she has been doing from and would not have a tolerance for, which would be another kind of thing. People that abuse drugs like that will build up a tolerance. People who do not, it will affect them a lot more drastically. Um, so hopefully we cleared that up. As far as like the with the cruise ship itself, um, was your mom able to at least go after the cruise liner for a wrongful death lawsuit? Is that right?
Uh, she did. Um,
I'm just thinking that someone needs to be held responsible. And
yeah,
the boyfriend is not been held responsible. And at the minimum, even if he did not give her the night or give her the methadone and say, "Hey, take this, it's NyQuil," not knowing whether he knew what the causes were or not, he brought that bottle with him on the cruise ship. And that bottle would have not been in her cabin, and she would not have had access to it if he didn't bring it in. And he knew that it was a dangerous substance, which is why he put it in a NyQuil bottle, because he knew that he wasn't allowed to have it.
yep,
So
yeah,
I don't see how there's not some type of charge that's coming his way. And I understand that with the feds, it's hard to process. It's not like state court where an officer can go down to the magistrate's office and swear out warrants for X, Y, and Z. You have to present it to a USADA. In this case, they went to the attorney general, and they would have to approve those charges.
yeah,
And unfortunately, that's the type of position that you don't take a case unless you're going to win. And so a lot of times they want every question asked or answered before they adopt a case. And that is one of the problems with cases like this is you're relying on the FBI, which I love the FBI, but look, they're dealing with a shit show and evidence that's either tampered with, destroyed, or not processed properly. Hell, the body wasn't even processed properly. They had to do an autopsy in Mexico before anyone in the U.S. even saw it. So, that from a case standpoint, and sorry to rant, but it's just I'm sure that it's just a cluster. And that's
yeah,
got to be very difficult. And I sincerely apologize that this has happened. And I feel for you
yeah.
and
I
your
mean,
family because it shouldn't happen.
yeah. Obviously, it was it was difficult to deal with for a long time. Um, some of my family members have just, and I don't blame them, have just resigned to the fact that we're never really going to get any significant answers other than what we already have, and I can't blame them. But that my sister, her passing sort of drove me to become a police officer because I was so disappointed with the way the case was handled that I thought, well, the only way for me to fix this is to go do it myself. And I even, as a police officer, did what I could to try to open the case again, because we didn't know the FBI had closed it. So I reached out to some people on the department I worked for that worked for our cold case unit, and asked them if they knew any information about it or if they could find any information about it. And they were like, no, we don't have anything. So they were, I guess, apparently never brought in. The FBI never asked. I worked for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they never asked LA County Sheriff to come in on it, even though they're responsible for the port in Long Beach, which I find kind of strange. But yeah, it's been difficult to try to deal with the no answers, but I'm trying to find it out now, trying to do it through FOIA requests and things like that. So
Yeah, and you would think that that would be some type of unit or task force that are going to look at these cases and give them additional training. And but I think that what reminds me, or what's bringing to mind about this case too, is just a reminder to the public of what you're dealing with when you are going on a cruise and you are even going overseas, is that making sure that you're aware of that the people on board may not have the best intentions, and you may be dealing with staff who are not the best people, and you're also in international waters. And if something happens, you're not going to be able to call 911.
yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think a lot of people kind of take for granted that because they're American, our constitutional rights just follow us wherever we go, and that just isn't the case, especially while on a cruise in international waters. There's no investigative body that's going to come take a case just because they want to. It's going to end up being forced onto somebody, and they're not going to want the case. So it's going to end up being, oh gosh, I got to deal with this. And they know it's going to be difficult because there's no protocol in place. There's no, standard operating procedures for every cruise line. When anytime something like this happens, where every cruise line is trained on, hey, if somebody dies on the cruise, this is what we do. We do XYZ, security does this, staff will do this, seal the room off. There just isn't any of that in place, which is a lot of what International Cruise Victims is trying to get done. And I'd be the first to tell you, I'm not telling you don't go on a cruise. Go on a cruise if you want to go on a cruise, but just be aware of the things, the rights that don't come with you. Be cognizant of who you're around. I always like to say, keep your head on a swivel.
Right.
Don't go with somebody you don't know and trust. Just be as cautious as you can be while still enjoying yourself. Otherwise, what's the point of going? But yeah, just do a little research, read up on international cruise victims. They have a lot of people's testimonies on there about what happened to them. And just, another thing to consider is that the medical staff on a cruise ship is some contracted doctor from another country that isn't held to the same standard as doctors here or in other countries. And because they're a contractor, the cruise line isn't directly liable for anything they do. So if, there's a malpractice issue, you got to go after the doctor individually, not the cruise ship. That's another way the cruise lines shield themselves from lawsuits. So, if you have a health condition, I would talk to your doctor before you go. Make sure that they're okay with you being at sea for 7 days. Make sure you have whatever medication you need. And if you order the drink package on a cruise ship, just because you're allowed to have 15 drinks in a day doesn't mean you should have 15 drinks in a day. Try to
Yeah.
keep your wits about you. But yeah, I'm not going to tell somebody not to go, but just do a little research, keep yourself and your family safe.
And I completely agree. used to go on cruises when I was young. I haven't been on one in 30 years, but I remember being in high school and you had complete freedom and you could get the wait staff to bring you drinks, and we thought that was so cool. And that's great and all, but or at least it was then. But people need to be mindful, like you're saying, that if you get out of control and do something stupid or pick a fight with someone, this is not, no one's coming to your rescue. So you've got to be able to be
Yeah.
prepared to be able to have your wits about you and make good decisions while enjoying yourself. And I think that medical piece is especially helpful, that you need to make sure that you're healthy enough to go without any type of medical intervention that you cannot perform yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another aspect that um, people don't realize is that it's basically a floating city, right? I
Right.
mean, there's some of these have thousands of people on them at a time, and they may have security on the boat, but it's not the same thing as having a police force. So they're going to be very reactive and not proactive at all. So they're not, the things that street level police officers do here in the States, they're not doing that on a cruise ship. They're not strolling through neighborhoods looking to see if anything suspicious is happening. None of that is happening. They're just kicking back and making sure, if there's a fight, they go break it up or whatever. They're not
Right.
actively trying to protect the people on the cruise.
Right. It's like the company police officer that's working a bar, and yeah, they're a law enforcement officer, but they're not there to take reports or to do investigations.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're breaking up the fights and telling you to go on your way. That's a good point. Um, well, Seth, I appreciate you coming on. Um, any last words before we go?
I don't think so. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you helping tell Ashley's story and spread the word about international cruise victims. I appreciate everybody who's watching and listening. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Is there anything that you would like to plug before we go?
I would just say that if you want to follow along with what I'm doing with Ashley's case, I do have a TikTok. It's Ashley Barnett's story on TikTok. Um, and I try to post there pretty regularly. Sometimes life gets in the way and I don't have time to get on there, but I do post there with updates and things that are going on. I just recently went through her both of her autopsy reports, and I've got a few things I want to go over with that. I'll do that on my TikTok, and following up with FOIA requests and things like that. So if you want to follow along, it's Ashley Barnett's story.
All right. Well, I'll put that in the show description. So make sure to check that out. If you would like to support me, you can start off by liking and subscribing to Santana True Crime. You can also pick up my book, A Murder on Campus, The Professor, the Cop, and North Carolina's Most Notorious Cold Case. That is about the 1973 cold case of Virginia Olson. She was murdered on the campus of UNC Asheville in North Carolina. She's actually the only murder that occurred on campus. You can get that on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, anywhere where you can buy a book. Seth, thank you so much again, and thank you all that have joined us. Good night.